All right, so we're diving deep today into something I think a lot of us are curious about. Staying flexible after 40. You've sent in a ton of articles, research, all about it. Clearly, you guys want to stay limber, and it's awesome.
It really is. And honestly, there are so many misconceptions about aging and flexibility. Like, a lot of folks just assume it's a downhill slide from here on out.
Yeah, like you hit a certain age and suddenly, bam, you're stiff as a board. But you know one thing that really jumped out at me? One of these studies linked stiff arteries to poor trunk flexibility. Makes you think a little bit, right?
It's a great point. We think of flexibility as like touching your toes, but this shows it goes way deeper. One study actually showed that adults over 40 who could sit on the floor, legs out straight, touch their toes, they were much less likely to have arterial stiffness.
Whoa, okay. That's a pretty good reason to prioritize flexibility right there.
I think so.
Okay, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
what's the deal with flexibility as we age? Do we just, like, automatically get stiffer?
Well, it's true. Our bodies do change. We lose some muscle mass naturally. We produce less collagen. All that affects flexibility, yeah.
Right.
But these articles make a really strong point. A huge part of stiffness comes from how we live, not just age.
Interesting. Okay, so you're saying it's not just like a ticking time bomb. It's more like we're slowly turning ourselves into, I don't know, inflexible pretzels.
I like that analogy. And that's good news. It means we have way more control than we think.
Okay, so we're not doomed. Phew, that's a relief. But where do we even begin with reclaiming flexibility? You mentioned lifestyle. What kind of things are we talking about here?
They really emphasize a holistic approach. It's more than just stretches. One article actually went deep on nutrition, specifically how anti-inflammatory foods can combat joint stiffness.
Hmm. So what we eat can impact how easily we move.
It really can.
Wow.
Oh.
Okay, what else should we be thinking about?
Sleep. Huge one. When we're sleep deprived, our muscles don't recover right. That's when you get that achy, stiff feeling. And of course, stress. I mean, we all know how that manifests in our bodies. Tight shoulders, that stiff neck, the whole deal.
Oh, absolutely. It's like our bodies keep a scorecard of all that stress. So I guess things like meditation, deep breathing, that could all play a part in better flexibility.
Absolutely. It's about creating an environment where our bodies can actually thrive, move freely. Some articles really talked up yoga and Pilates too, combines that stretching with strength and mindfulness.
So it's not just about touching your toes, it's more about overall, like, well-being, mental and physical.
Exactly. Now, speaking of stretching, though, I know you mentioned earlier some really interesting names like thread the needle, scorpion, even the world's greatest stretch. Sounds like these articles are all about variety.
They are. And that's important. Different stretches work, different muscle groups, different aspects of flexibility. One that really stood out to me was the Samson stretch. It targets these deep hip flexor muscles that get so tight from sitting, which, let's face it, many of us do a lot of.
Oh, yeah, especially those of us with desk jobs or long commutes. So tight hip flexors are bad for posture and flexibility. What's the long-term impact of that?
Well, think about it. Chronically tight hip flexors. That can lead to lower back pain, poor posture, even difficulty walking. Imagine trying to move freely when your hips are constantly pulling you forward.
Not a good picture. So tell me more about this Samson stretch. Is that something we can all do, or do I need to be a mythical hero to pull it off? Haha, it's simpler than it sounds, though it does take practice. It's basically a lunge position, one knee down. Then you extend your arms overhead, push your hips forward gently. You should feel it in the front of that hip.
Okay, yeah, I'm visualizing it, and my hip flexors are already complaining. But before I go try any mythical hero stretches, let's back up a bit. These articles, they mention a ton of different exercises, some familiar, some not so much. What are the key takeaways for choosing the right stretches and, like, doing them effectively?
The golden rule. Listen to your body. Avoid pain. It's not about forcing yourself into crazy positions. It's about finding what feels right, that comfortable range of motion,
Yeah.
and building from there.
Okay, so no pain, no gain does not apply here. Good to know. But how do we even know which stretches are the right ones?
A lot of the sources emphasized focusing on where you feel stiff or restricted. Spend a lot of time sitting. Hip flexor stretches are your best friend. Tight shoulders from being hunched over a computer. Focus on that upper back and chest. It's about tailoring it to you, addressing your needs, your imbalances.
I see. So personalized flexibility, not just following some generic routine, makes sense.
Yeah.
But with all the stretches out there, where do we even begin building a routine?
A lot of articles highlighted using both static and dynamic stretches. Static is like holding a position, for a while. Dynamic involves movement.
Okay, so static is like classic hamstring stretches, hold for 30 seconds. Dynamic is more like controlled arm circles, leg swings, that kind of thing.
Exactly. They suggest starting with dynamic to warm up the muscles, then going into static for that deeper flexibility work. And don't forget consistency. It's better to do a little every day than try to cram it all in once a week.
Yeah, that makes sense. Small, consistent efforts over time lead to bigger gains.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, so before we get too deep into building a routine, let's take stock of what we've learned so far. It sounds like staying flexible after 40 is about a lot more than just stretching, right? It's about how we move, how we sleep, what we eat, managing that stress. It's a whole thing.
It is a whole thing. And we've learned that flexibility affects more than just whether we can touch our toes, right? It ties into heart health, posture, even how we feel overall.
Yeah, it really is about creating a lifestyle that helps our bodies move freely and comfortably.
Exactly. So before the break, we were talking about choosing those right stretches, mixing in both the static and dynamic movements.
Right. And I'm ready to get into specifics. We teased some of these earlier, like the thread the needle and the scorpion. What are those all about?
Thread the needle is a really good one for that upper back, the shoulders. A lot of us spend so much time hunched over desks or looking down at phones.
Yeah, guilty as charged. I can practically feel my shoulders like creeping up towards my ears right now just talking about it. So how does this stretch even work?
Okay, so picture yourself on all fours, like you're about to crawl.
Okay, got it.
Now, take one arm and slide it under your chest, reaching across to the other side. You'll feel that stretch in your shoulder and upper back. Helps counteract that rounded posture we get from sitting all day.
Okay, I can see that. Sounds like a good way to release some tension up there. What about scorpion? That one sounds a little intimidating, I gotta say.
It's got a dramatic name for sure, but it's actually really good for spinal mobility, flexibility in the back, hamstrings. You start lying on your stomach, then extend one leg up and over your body, trying to touch your foot to the opposite hand.
Whoa. Okay, I might need to Google a picture of that one. Sounds like something I'd see in a yoga class.
It is a yoga pose, yeah. But like with any stretch, you got to be careful. Listen to your body, don't force anything.
Right, safety first, always. Now, we can't forget the Samson stretch you mentioned. Sounds almost mythical. And you said it's great for those tight hip flexors we were talking about.
It does have a powerful name, that's for sure. And the benefits are pretty powerful too. It's a lunge position with one knee down, arms extended overhead, and you gently push your hips forward. Feel that deep stretch in the front of your hip.
Oh yeah, targeting those muscles that get all shortened from sitting. I can already feel my hip flexors complaining just thinking about it.
It can be an intense one. Just make sure you're doing it right, not overdoing it. Remember, consistency, proper form, those are key, not pushing yourself to the absolute limit.
Makes sense. Now, before we move on, can we go back to that connection between flexibility and arteries? You mentioned that study where people who could touch their toes were less likely to have stiff arteries. What's that all about?
Oh, yeah, that was interesting. They looked at adults over 40 and those with good hamstring flexibility, so like being able to touch their toes, their arteries were healthier. Shows you flexibility isn't just about doing the splits or anything, it's about keeping our blood vessels healthy and elastic. And that's huge for our heart health.
Wow. Okay, so that really reframes flexibility, huh? It's like a sign of overall health, not just athleticism.
Exactly. It's not about vanity, it's about taking care of our bodies, inside and out.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like we're investing in our future selves with every stretch. Now, we've talked a lot about the physical benefits, but some of these articles also mentioned a connection between flexibility and our mental well-being.
Definitely. They talked about the link between flexibility and lower stress. Makes sense, right? When our muscles are all tight and tense, that sends signals to our nervous system, triggers the stress response. So stretching, releasing that tension, it can calm everything down.
So it's like a physical way to de-stress, calm the mind. That's cool.
It is cool, and it goes beyond just stress. Some studies suggest stretching, mindful movement like yoga. They can improve mood, reduce anxiety, even boost how our brains work.
Wow, that's amazing, like a mind-body connection.
Yeah.
Taking care of our physical flexibility actually impacts our mental state too.
That's it. It all comes back to that holistic approach we were talking about. Flexibility isn't just physical. It's part of our overall well-being.
This has been so eye-opening. Clearly, staying flexible is about a lot more than just those stretches. Nourishing our bodies, managing stress, being mindful about how we move, taking care of ourselves overall.
And remember, it's never too late to start. Even small changes can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Find what works for you, make it a part of your life. That's what matters.
Now, before we wrap up all this flexibility talk, there's one more piece I'd love to get into, the role of mindfulness. How can being mindful actually make us more flexible?
Ooh, that sounds fascinating. Let's dive into that.
So, we were about to get into mindfulness and flexibility. It's something that doesn't get talked about enough, I think. We always think of flexibility as like purely physical, but what if our mental state is actually playing a big part?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Could being more mindful, like more aware of our bodies and how they feel, actually help us, move better?
There's a lot of research that suggests that, yeah, when we're stressed or anxious, our muscles tend to tense up. That's that familiar feeling of tightness we get.
Right? It's like holding all that stress in our bodies. So if we can calm the mind, could that actually translate into more flexibility physically?
That's the idea. Things like meditation, deep breathing can help with that stress, less muscle tension. But mindfulness is more than just relaxing. It's about like tuning into those sensations in your body, noticing where you're tight, where you're uncomfortable, but without judging it.
I see. So instead of just like powering through a stretch, you're really paying attention to how your muscles feel?
Exactly. And that awareness can help prevent injuries too. You're not pushing too hard. You're finding that sweet spot where you're challenging yourself but not hurting yourself.
It's like your mind and body are having a conversation, working together to find that ease and movement.
That's a great way to put it. And the research backs it up. Studies have shown that adding mindfulness to stretching can really improve flexibility.
Wow, really? So it's not just the physical act of stretching, it's also how we approach it mentally.
Totally. It's about being present,
Mhm.
paying attention, and approaching each stretch with curiosity, self-compassion.
This is so cool. It's like a whole new layer to flexibility training. It's
Wow.
not about forcing it. It's about that mind-body connection, moving with intention.
I think that's a really important takeaway for everyone. Flexibility isn't just a goal, it's like a practice. Mindfulness, taking care of ourselves.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's something we can benefit from no matter our age, right?
Absolutely. So whether you're a seasoned athlete or just starting out, try bringing that mindfulness into your stretching. You might be surprised.
That's great advice. Wow, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive. The science, the exercises, even the mindset behind staying flexible as we get older. It's clear that it's more than just a quick fix. It's a journey.
And it's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely. Well, if you enjoyed this episode of The Deep Dive, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. And don't forget to check out the show notes for links to all the research we talked about. Until next time, keep exploring, keep moving, and keep diving deep.